Kevin said, please talk about DeVonta Smith. Feels like a player to down tier from on for me in most builds. So let's just take a look at DeVonta Smith, and then Matt can kind of talk about, if you were to tier down from him, maybe to accumulate a lower tier player in a pick, what would you do? What situation? Who's a player maybe you could look at and maybe a pick added on. But while Matt does that, I'll talk about at least where he's going currently in startups, right? So DeVonta Smith is the wide receiver 18. He's going as the 57th pick overall. So Dak Prescott's the pick ahead of him at 56. Xavier Worthy's the pick behind him at 58, right? In terms of rookie picks, 105 to 106, DeVonta Smith is currently being drafted in startups between the 105 and the 106 in this year's 2025 rookie class. Now, guys going around him, Xavier Worthy, DJ Moore, like we just said, Zay Flowers, Chris Olave, Terry McLaurin. I guess I'll tee it up for Matt, but for me, it depends if you're competing or not. If you're moving DeVonta Smith, and maybe if you want to share that to us, Kevin, it can give us a little bit more insight as Matt gives his thoughts. But it's going to depend on, are you down tiering from him to maybe accumulate a pick because you need depth, or are you looking to down tier because maybe you're just looking to rebuild in general, and so you're moving him to maybe get a younger guy, or maybe you're looking to compete and you need an extra depth spot. So maybe you're taking a guy like a Tyreek Hill who's going 10 wide receivers behind him and maybe picking up a draft pick on top of that. So Matt, what are your thoughts? If you were going to down tier from DeVonta Smith, what would you be looking for?
Yeah, I think Kevin's spot on here where he's saying feels like a player to down tier from on most builds. I don't disagree. If I'm contending and, he's my wide receiver 3, I'm not going to necessarily go out there and try and move him if I don't have a replacement option, because he is certainly still good. He averages over 14 points per game this past season. He's in a good offense with Philly. We can talk about Jalen Hurts and his passing production, but that's for another day, I'm sure. But just in the grand scheme of things, I would be interested in selling DeVonta Smith. I've got a couple shares left, and I'm attempting to, try and move those right now. I think the value, you said he's between the 105 and the 106 on Dynasty Data Lab. That's pretty good. I do think that it's probably a little closer to being, maybe the 107 to the 109 in actual trade value, because I think people are going to be really stingent on moving those rookie picks, which is what happens as we approach the draft. Those picks always climb. They always go up, and the value continues to rise. But if I were to down tier, and let's just talk about who we just talked about. If you could move DeVonta Smith and net DJ Moore in a second, would you do that? I'd be interested, because I don't think you're necessarily sacrificing any current production. The age is not that different. DeVonta Smith is 26. DJ Moore is 27, although DJ Moore will be 28 by the time the year rolls around. I don't think you're sacrificing too much in the long term either. And if you're netting a decent second-round pick or maybe another player, that's something I would be interested in. You could also maybe try and go get Brandon Ayuk. There's a lot of speculation about what's going to happen in San Francisco, which is fitting because Hoff just joined the chat, so he's going to hear me talk about San Francisco. But I would be interested in maybe going to get Brandon Ayuk. I think you could get him for a discount and get something on top of DeVonta Smith. Another name I'll just throw out here, this one's a little bit riskier because I'm not necessarily sold on the profile, would be Keon Coleman. You could probably move DeVonta Smith and get Keon Coleman in a first. Like, that would not shock me if you get a late first on top of that. So it's something I'd be interested in. Keon Coleman's 22 years old. So there's a lot to grow in. He's tied to Josh Allen. So there's a lot that goes in there. But I'm with you, Kevin. I would be moving DeVonta Smith, or at least shopping around to see what I could get.
Yeah. I'm looking at some recent trades, right, to try to see DeVonta Smith and, has he been moved straight up? And if so, what for what, right? There's some trades in here from Dynasty Data Lab, right? A 14-teamer PPR, DeVonta Smith was moved for Metcalf, a 2025 second and a 2026 fourth. I think that's that's pretty fair. If you believe in Rodgers, and you're looking to add a little bit of depth as a contender, I don't know how far off Smith and Metcalf will be. And if you're getting a 2025 second added on plus a fourth, that's not terrible. Another guy you could really look at if you're contending is Chris Godwin. Especially if you're contending, because you could probably get a really solid second piece added on, because look, Godwin in startups is going 5 rounds behind DeVonta Smith. Now, you're operating as if, are your league mates savvy enough where, are people down on Godwin after an injury last year? And plus they lost Liam Cohen, right? I think Godwin, as long as he's healthy, is going to have another good season, but you could tear down to Godwin and probably get like a 201 or a 202. Like that would be something I would prefer, because I don't think Godwin's that risky unless he gets hurt again, because you're probably going to get another really good season as long as he's on the field. So that would be personally my move if I was gonna tear down from him. I think that's a solid play. I probably prefer that over the DK Metcalf move, honestly, unless you're not trying to get that much older, right? DK's a little bit younger than Godwin, so I can understand that, but the situation is much better for Godwin.
And real quick, Pete, he mentions here in his next chat, he could go get Worthy or McLaurin. DeVonta Smith for Worthy, I don't know. It's going to be really league dependent. I've kind of done a little bit of research in my leagues to see if I could go get Worthy, and a lot of people tend to view him pretty high. Like most people think he's closer to wide receiver 15 overall, whereas DeVonta Smith is more like 20 to 24. So you might have to pay a little bit to get Worthy. I don't necessarily hate it. It's just going to depend on your build. But the McLaurin play is very interesting. I mean, I do like McLaurin in this next season. McLaurin's older. He's 29. So if you could move DeVonta Smith and go get Terry in a second, or Terry and maybe a mid-tier running back, like maybe a Tyrone Tracy, if you want to take that bet and see if he gets replaced, I'm at least interested. It's certainly going to add depth for your team and some more value for you.
Yeah, and I agree. And Sleaze comes in here and he also sent us a $10 super chat. I don't have a beer on me. I'm drinking a little bit of wine. So you'll have to catch me next time, Sleaze, when I'm drinking a beer. But I'll get you a beer chug. I don't have any cans of beer on me. I don't know why. I was gonna grab a beer, but I only had wine left over from the wedding. But I don't think this is a bad idea either. Look, if you're a believer in Jaden Reed, I think Reed plus a late first wouldn't be a bad deal either, right? I mean, it depends, right? If you're contending, you really have to believe in Jaden Reed, I think, because there could be a solid, at least from a consistency standpoint, from what Jaden Reed's can have spike games, but he also might kind of hurt you on a week-to-week basis, where Godwin has a higher floor and has a similar-ish ceiling. But I mean, it's going to be league dependent. I don't hate this move, depending on, would Jaden Reed be your wide receiver 2? Because that would be risky. If it's your wide receiver 3 or a flex spot, okay, then we can talk, especially if you're getting a late round first this year, then I would be confident or a little bit more comfortable doing that. So I think that's definitely not a bad option. And Kevin said, been thinking of tearing down from DeVonta to Olave and a plus also. I don't think that's a bad move either. The thing I worry about with Olave is he could be one hit away. Like those concussions do worry me. I mean, you look at what happened to Wes Welker, towards the end of his career with the concussions, like it's no joke. And some guys are just as long as Derek Carr's there's a possibility that there's going to be some more hospital balls, and he just finds himself in tough spots when he's catching the football, when Derek Carr's throwing the football. So not necessarily the most ideal, but I mean, if Olave can stay healthy, I don't hate it either. I really don't. But